When I visit a city and I'm making a video, I'm always searching for the thing that's different about it that makes the city unique or exceptional. Well, for Lexington, Kentucky, it was easy. It is, after all, the first city in North America to institute an urban growth boundary, but that's really just scratching the surface. Even just the things that compelled Lexingtonians to institute the UGB almost 70 years ago, and the impacts the UGB has had on the city's livability also make Lexington exceptional, but there's a lot more we're going to get to. Now, there are some people who are going to say, you run a YouTube channel about urbanism. It's literally called CityNerd, so why are you talking about Kentucky? For example, a person's definition of city may hinge on whether there's a major pro sports team in town, a criterion Lexington fails. But I would just encourage people to broaden their definition of urban because there are a lot of cool things about smaller and mid-sized cities. Also, I would argue that there are some years when the University of Kentucky men's basketball team is at least as good as the Washington Wizards. Okay, so let's get oriented to the central part of the city. One thing I like to do when I'm prepping for a city visit is to look at my back catalog of videos and see where the city has shown up on like top 10 lists, so I can ground truth whatever the data told me. And Lexington certainly doesn't show up often, but I remember being mildly shocked when it ranked in the top 10 zip codes in the country for affordable urbanism, and it was 40508 in central Lexington. The zip code's geography actually has a notch that excludes the core of downtown, but it includes everything around it, like Rupp Arena, where the UK basketball team plays, and it includes Gatton Park on the north side of the arena, which the most recent aerials in Google Earth still show as surface parking lot, but that was decommissioned a few years ago when the city began transforming the area, including daylighting the creek beneath. This isn't the only thing the city is doing to reduce the parking footprint downtown. The city also eliminated minimum parking requirements in 2022, the only city in Kentucky to have done so. Walking around downtown Lexington and the inner parts of the city, it's hard not to feel like it's a bit of an outlier in the broader context of statewide politics. After all, it is a college town, of sorts, but keep in mind Kentucky does have a pretty popular Democratic governor who just might make some waves in 2028. Just west of downtown, you get into South Hill, which just has these incredibly cool housing typologies. Lots of brick. I'm not sure what the regulations around exterior color are, but blue is extremely popular. I'll come back to this area later when we talk about the University of Kentucky. Then just east of downtown, you get into Gratz Park, which has some similar fabric to it, including several historical locations, like this is the original Western US. Lots of firsts west of the Appalachians, including the first college, Transylvania University. Make sure to pick up some gear. A little northeast of the central city, we're still inside 40508, and the area includes a lot of cool old industrial near where the rail runs, but also definitely has a streetcar suburb feel to it. And this is where you'll find the Gray Line building, which for decades functioned as the headquarters and bus barn for regional intercity lines, but in recent years has been transformed into an extremely popular adaptive reuse project with tons of independent shops around the perimeter. There was some sort of consignment fair going on in the central hall. There's a service window where you can grab beverages and just walk around. Vibes were pretty sweet. Okay, so I can just give you the verdict now. Yes, everything within a couple miles of downtown Lexington is extremely walkable, and I think my step count on the first full day I was there can confirm that. And one thing you might have noticed already, unlike basically every other US city, there are no freeways anywhere near downtown. The interstates that serve Lexington, I-64 and I-75, were routed well outside the established urban parts of the city, which is a shocking contrast to pretty much every major city in this part of the country. There is a freeway loop inside Lexington, New Circle Road, 75 years old, so it actually predates the Federal Aid Highway Act, and it doesn't even interface with the interstate system that was constructed shortly after. New Circle is slightly unfortunate, but since it's a couple miles outside the historic center, it ends up leaving the fabric and the connectivity of Lexington's central neighborhoods untouched. And I think this is a big part of why walking here is so pleasant. Not only do you not have to deal with the connectivity nightmare a freeway brings, or the noise, or the terrible air quality, it also has secondary benefits in that you don't have unsightly feeder roads and ramps, and it affects driver behavior too. You don't get this thing where drivers coming off a freeway tend to speed on city streets regardless of the speed limit because of the driving behavior that freeways encourage. But on the topic of speed limits, Lexington does something that you don't see that often. By ordinance, all streets are limited at 25 miles per hour unless otherwise posted, and the city will absolutely let you know about it. The sense I got walking around this part of town was that where so many American cities seem to be designed for the convenience of people from suburban areas who want to drive in and out of them as quickly and conveniently as possible, Lexington seems to be designed to prioritize the people who actually live here. Pretty revolutionary concept. Other interesting neighborhoods inside New Circle. Kenwick, and this is where I found an indicator species of urban community that I've never seen before. A disc golf target basket one of the neighbors put right in the planting strip. It's like an open invitation to work on your short game. There was no real commercial node in Kenwick, but you got these interesting storefronts woven right into the residential fabric, and apparently extremely popular with the locals. Ashland Park, home of the Henry Clay Estate, which is about a 1.5 mile commute to his law office downtown. The estate and grounds are now preserved as a museum and open space, but Ashland Park itself, definitely walkable, but at least as unaffordable as when Henry Clay himself lived here. The Chevy Chase neighborhood, little free libraries, also an indicator species, and can someone please locate Football the Cat? This is killing me. Really aesthetically pleasing residential, seems like a tolerant neighborhood. They're even tolerant of turquoise paint jobs and excessive rooftop solar. Solid commercial node on the north side of the neighborhood too, although apparently the angle parking is a challenge. The warehouse district, southeast of downtown, still inside New Circle. Lots of adaptive reuse, brunch spots, breweries, trackside Montessori day schools, but also non-adaptive, non-reuse. This J.M. Smucker's plant just across from the warehouse district is purportedly the world's largest peanut butter factory, and depending on prevailing winds, you will get a bit of a scorched peanut smell all over central Lexington. Honestly, not completely unpleasant, but I am an unreformed Jif guy. Let's talk about another thing that's not exactly unique about Lexington, but very uncommon. And that is that Lexington and Fayette County became a consolidated city-county government in 1974. Why does this matter? Well, to me, it's a more efficient and equitable form of regional decision-making and policy-making. In the vast majority of US metro areas, people who want to opt out of the central city and keep their tax dollars in a suburban enclave are perfectly able to do so. Well, because Lexington is coterminous with Fayette County, there really aren't any suburbs to speak of, and there's no opting out. Everyone is part of the city, and theoretically, everyone's pulling in the same direction. And you do get that feeling traveling around the city. The urban parts of Fayette County, the dense economic and cultural engine of the city, is valued by everyone, not in an abstract, nebulous way, but in a way that's codified in how infrastructure and services are funded and prioritized. Because this part is super important. The city and the county are geographically identical, but that doesn't mean all of Fayette County is urban. In fact, it's very much the opposite. And that's because back in 1958, Lexington became the first US city to institute an urban growth boundary, or really an urban service boundary in the local parlance. The USB determines where the city will provide services like sanitary sewer and trash pickup, focusing urban development inside the boundary and protecting high-value agricultural land outside the boundary, which is hugely important to the city's cultural identity and its economy. Just to give you a sense of how this plays out, the USB contains only about 30% of the land inside the consolidated city-county, but it contains 98% of the population. So if you go out about 3.5 miles northwest of downtown Lexington, you will find yourself right at the USB. There's a pull-off where you could look out on horse farms and watch drivers navigate through a roundabout that features a statue of Secretariat, and you can bone up on the geology of the local bluegrass lands, the rise of the horse breeding industry, and even the importance of the USB itself. Tourism is critical to Lexington's economy. People will set up a base camp in the city, but then spend lots of time out on county roads exploring horse country, and it is pretty spectacular. And we absolutely cannot go out west of the USB without going to ground zero of horse country, the Keeneland Racetrack. It's actually more than a racetrack, it's also the largest thoroughbred auction house in the world. Unfortunately, we weren't quite in racing season yet when I visited, but you can still do a free self-guided tour, which is kind of fun and a bit surreal. You can literally walk around the whole grandstand and kind of get the vibe of the place. And you can walk on this apron that just goes right up to the rail. Like, I'm amazed how much access you can get just as an unsupervised weirdo walking around. I would definitely try to come at racing season though, and Keeneland really is at the heart of Lexington's identity. When you're walking around the city, you can't help noticing not just horse sculptures and murals everywhere, but the way horses are integrated into the iconography of just about everything, including the city flag. The other thing you might go outside the USB for, bourbon distilleries. I kind of had that on my list for this trip, but my schedule got a bit congested. Luckily, you can do alright on this count in Lexington itself, not far from the city center. You go out the Town Branch Trail along Manchester Street about a mile and you're in the Distillery District, which is a cultural, dining, and entertainment hub built around the renovated James E. Pepper Distillery. But there are other distilleries and breweries here too. It's definitely an adaptive reuse hotspot, but it is beautiful. There's a creek, a rail right-of-way, and a multi-use path all in the same alignment. And the buildings here just catch the light beautifully if you're here at the right time. I definitely could have hung out here a lot more. Okay, I haven't even talked about transit in Lexington yet, or what I think is the most interesting part of the city. But first, I do want to give a big thanks to the Fayette Alliance for bringing me out to talk about urban planning and smart growth at the Kentucky Theater downtown. Really cool to see so many people in Lexington who care so much about their city and all the things that make it great. The Fayette Alliance is devoted to advocating for smart growth in Lexington and building community understanding of how things like the USB and coordinated land use and transportation planning are critical to the environment, the economy, and quality of life. If you want to get involved and support, I've got links down the description. Also, general ticket sales for my April 24th event in New York City now open. I'll have special guests, Q&A, a New York specific top 10 list, and I'll share a work in progress. It'll be kind of like hanging out with me while I'm making a video in real time, if that's any kind of selling point. I hope to see a lot of you out there. Okay, let's talk transit because unfortunately, not every part of Lexington is as walkable and charming as the central neighborhoods, and I did want to get out to other parts of the city to give you all a balanced view. Just about every route on the LexTrans system converges on the downtown transit center. Fare is just $1. Frequencies on the different lines vary. The route I wanted to take, the 5 Nicholasville Road, runs mostly every 15 minutes between like 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. Actually pretty decent for a city this size. And the frequency is probably because the 5 really hits all of Lexington's big trip generators. Downtown, yeah, but it also skirts the north edge of the University of Kentucky campus, a major medical center, and then the city's biggest retail clusters. I didn't get out and film along Nicholasville Road. The weather was bad and it's not really a place I wanted to hang out, but I just want to point out that not only is a lot of it 7 lanes wide, but it's had reversible lanes since I believe the 1970s. And I don't really want to talk about this. If you want my take, you can go watch my Phoenix video. Outside of New Circle, the reversible lanes disappear and you just have a garden variety strode. This is a lot of right-of-way on an arterial street for a city the size of Lexington. There's been some chatter about BRT or even light rail to replace Route 5, and there's a lot of opportunity for transit-oriented development out here. In fact, in a sense, there's already TOD at Fritz Farm out at the end of Route 5. I mean, yes, it is a lifestyle center. You can be uncharitable and call it simulated urbanism, but this is actually more multifamily than you'll see at the typical upscale shopping center. There's a grocery store on site. You actually could live a car-light life here. Is Fritz Farm the future of Lexington? I mean, building dense multifamily takes pressure off the urban service boundary, but you probably need a lot more of it and a higher frequency, 7-day-a-week transit service right down the spine of Nicholasville Road. Oh, by the way, number 6 food city in the US according to Condé Nast, and if you go to the Fayette Mall, also on Nicholasville Road, you'll find out why. So I've kind of glossed over one of the most important reasons why Lexington gets so much right, and that is it's kind of a college town, bigger than Ann Arbor or Champaign, but smaller than Madison or Knoxville. So the University of Kentucky, enrollment 35,000 plus, is pretty massively influential on the city's built environment and how people get around. It means the city has a sizable built-in constituency that not only accomplishes most of their trips without driving, but necessarily lives close into the center of the city and places a high value on having lots of services and amenities that all exist within a walkable environment. In a way, this goes hand in hand with the entire philosophy around smart growth and letting the city be urban so surrounding rural areas can just be rural areas. But also, having this population in close to the city center and the fact that there's a growth boundary puts some pressure on housing prices too. I would still categorize zip code 40508 as affordable urbanism, but if too many people agree with me and not enough new infill housing gets developed, that affordability is gonna disappear. There's a lot of historic South Hill, the neighborhood sandwiched between the university and downtown, that's already dense and established, but there's still lots of parts of central Lexington that I would categorize as underutilized. There are arguments that constraining developable land with something like a UGB creates upward pressure on housing prices. The evidence for that is pretty weak though. Maybe I'll explore further in a video back in Portland. But in this part of the country, I think rising housing prices are evidence that the city has been successful in doubling down on the things that make Lexington special. While I was here, I met a lot of people who moved to Lexington from bigger, more expensive coastal cities. My thinking is, being an attractive place to live is only a problem if you aren't very intentional about planning for the people your city is inevitably gonna attract. Well, Lexington is a very intentional city, and let's hope they just continue to get that balance right. Thanks again to the people who brought me in to talk about urbanism and smart growth. I got to meet lots of cool viewers from Kentucky and Ohio and Indiana, and everybody was very cool. Nobody was a weird stalker, so that was a huge plus. Stuff like that does happen in my field of work, unfortunately, but honestly, you don't even have to be a niche internet celebrity to have problems with this kind of thing. It's 2026, and we live in a world where it seems like people's personal information is more accessible than ever. It may be news to you, for example, that your personal information gets sold online by data brokers, meaning anyone can buy your personal information. Well, I think we all have the right to stay private and protect our personal data, and that's where today's sponsor, Delete Me, comes in. Delete Me's mission is simple: to remove the customer's information from search results. You set up a personal profile, and then Delete Me experts go to work removing your personal data from search engines and data broker sites. After 7 days, you get a detailed report that tells you what they found, which was a bit of a scary revelation for me, and what they removed, including the specific websites and how much traffic they get. And Delete Me keeps working for you all year long. They continue to monitor and remove your data, and you get follow-up reports every few months. My most recent, they reviewed 542 listings and removed 9. It's all about keeping your personal information private, and the results I've seen are why I trust Delete Me to help keep my internet profile low. One other thought on this, a lot of you out there might consider getting a family plan because when someone buys your data from a broker, they naturally end up getting a lot of information about your loved ones too, and vice versa. So if you're concerned about your personal data wandering around in the wilds of the internet, consider buying some peace of mind. Get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/CityNerd and use promo code CityNerd at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/CityNerd, code CityNerd. And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining today, and thanks as always to the patrons for your direct support and the Nebula subscribers. It's really helped me build a platform where I can go to places like Lexington and connect with a wider community of people who care deeply about their cities. Thanks again to the Fayette Alliance for bringing me out too. I had a blast. Keep the great topic suggestions coming. I'll be back with a new episode in the not too distant future, and I'll see you then. Thanks again to Delete Me for sponsoring this video. To get your data removed from the internet, check out Delete Me via my link down the description and get 20% off.